My name is Claire, and I am 21 years old. This story happened to me and my mother, Laura, in 2021 in a small town called Ravenwood. I still remember every detail as if it happened yesterday. What started as small disturbances turned into a real nightmare, an experience that changed our lives forever. One day I was in my room when I noticed something was wrong. The clock that used to be on my dresser had disappeared. I asked my mother, Laura, if she had moved it, but she also didn't know where it was. This wasn't the first time something seemed out of place. Small things disappeared or appeared in different places from where we had left them. At first, we thought it was just forgetfulness or carelessness, but the frequency of these events began to worry us. One night, while I was watching TV in the living room, the phone rang. I answered, and a soft, strange voice said, "I'm watching you." I was paralyzed with fear. The voice continued, describing in detail what I was wearing at that moment. I quickly hung up the phone, my hands trembling. My mother tried to calm me down, saying it was probably a prank, but I knew something was very wrong. The phone calls continued, always at night. The voice seemed to know everything about us, and the feeling of being watched grew every day. Things got worse when we started hearing noises around the house, like footsteps upstairs while we were downstairs, or muffled laughter coming from empty rooms. I would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of something moving inside the walls and could no longer sleep peacefully. I remember one specific night when I heard heavy footsteps coming from the attic. I slowly climbed the stairs, each step increasing my fear. When I got there, everything seemed normal, but the feeling that someone was there, watching me, was overwhelming. I found nothing, but the fear intensified. We decided to move, thinking that leaving the house behind would solve our problems. On the day we returned to pick up the last of our belongings, the atmosphere was tense. My mother and I were in the living room packing the last things when I looked down the hallway and saw something that left me in shock. A man was standing there, wearing one of my mother's old dresses. His face was covered in smudged makeup, giving him a grotesque appearance. He was looking at us with a disturbing smile. He was thin, with long, tangled hair. The smeared makeup on his face made his eyes look even crazier. His smile was a grimace, distorted and frightening. For a moment I was paralyzed, but then I ran outside, yelling for my mother to call the police. The police arrived quickly, and after searching the house, discovered something terrifying. The man, identified as David, had been living inside the walls. They found hidden passages and small compartments where he would hide, watching us through holes in the walls. David had turned our house into his personal hideout, watching our every move without us knowing. David was arrested, but the fear persisted. Knowing that someone had been there, watching us so closely, was terrifying. Even after we moved, the trauma of being secretly watched and stalked never went away. That year in Ravenwood is a memory that will never fade, a real nightmare that taught me to always be alert, even in the most peaceful moments.
This event made me question everything I believed about life and death. The experience was so real, so vivid, that I can't dismiss it as a mere hallucination. Let me tell you about something that happened to me in the summer of 1982. It's a memory that has stayed with me forever. I was sitting on the porch of my house, enjoying the warm evening breeze. The sun was setting, and everything was peaceful, as if time had stood still. It was one of those moments of tranquility that you want to last forever. Suddenly, I felt the air grow heavy, as if something was about to happen. That's when I heard a soft and familiar voice coming from inside the house saying, "George, come here quickly." The voice sounded urgent. I jumped up immediately, my heart racing, knowing that no one else was in the house. I entered, not knowing what to expect. The voice seemed to come from the living room, a place full of memories. I walked over, but the room was empty and silent. Whatever I was expecting to find, it wasn't there. Yet the sound of that familiar voice still echoed in my mind. Then came a deafening crash from the porch, a sound of metal hitting hard. I ran to see what had happened and was shocked to find the chair where I had been sitting moments before completely destroyed. A heavy iron gutter had come loose from the roof and fallen right where I had been. The impact was so strong that the chair was in pieces. If I had stayed outside, the outcome would have been tragic. I stood there, stunned, taking in what had just happened. The chair I had been sitting in minutes before was now in pieces, and the iron gutter lay on the ground. It all seemed surreal, hard to believe. The sound of the voice still echoed in my mind, clear and distinct. It was as if something or someone was trying to protect me. I couldn't understand why, but I felt a strange connection to that voice. Something inside me said it wasn't just a coincidence. I looked at the wreckage and realized how close I had come to disaster. I started to remember all the moments spent on that porch, how it was a special place for the two of us. And then, the most disturbing thought came to my mind. A distant but clear memory surfaced. It was the way she said my name, the softness and urgency I knew so well. As everything spun in my mind, I felt a deep, overwhelming longing for her. Anna, my dear wife who had already passed away. Imagine waking up in a new body, but with memories of a past life. In the quiet village of Blackwood, a supernatural mystery left the residents bewildered and scared. This is the story of the Ravenwood Sisters, an enigma that defies logic and makes us question the limits of reality. In 1959, twin sisters Isabella and Emily Ravenwood lost their lives in a tragic car accident. On that fateful autumn day, the sky was overcast and a thin mist covered the village streets. The twins were on their way to school with their parents when suddenly, a runaway car appeared in the wrong lane. The driver, apparently unable to control the vehicle, collided head-on with the Ravenwood car. The impact was devastating, leaving Isabella and Emily critically injured. Despite desperate efforts to save them, the twins did not survive and died on the way to the hospital. The village of Blackwood was devastated by the loss of these two young lives, and the Ravenwood family plunged into deep mourning. 2 years after the tragedy, hope returned to the Ravenwood family with the birth of another set of twins, Alice and Grace, in 1961. However, from an early age, Alice and Grace began to exhibit behaviors and memories they couldn't possibly have. The new twins remembered specific details of Isabella and Emily's lives. Alice had an inexplicable fear of cars, refusing to get into any vehicle and becoming paralyzed with terror at the sound of engines. Grace, on the other hand, spoke of places she had never visited, describing with precision the school and park where Isabella and Emily used to play. In a particularly eerie incident, Grace picked up an old doll that had belonged to Isabella and called it by name, claiming it was her favorite toy. Additionally, both girls had vivid dreams about the accident, describing scenes that coincidentally matched the details their parents had shared about that tragic day. The parents, initially skeptical, began to believe that something supernatural was occurring. They consulted specialists, from psychologists to parapsychologists, but no one could explain the phenomenon. Were Alice and Grace the reincarnation of Isabella and Emily? Or was there another explanation for these inexplicable memories? To this day, the case of the Ravenwood Sisters remains a mystery. What really happened in that quiet village? Could they be proof that reincarnation is real? The enigma of the Ravenwood Sisters continues to fascinate and haunt those who hear their story. I've always considered myself a rational person, someone who doesn't get shaken by superstitions or unfounded fears. I grew up in an old apartment, but I always saw that building as just a place filled with stories and good memories. However, that night, something changed forever the way I see the world around me. My parents were away, enjoying a weekend in the countryside, and I was in charge of taking care of Max, our golden retriever. I arrived at the apartment late in the afternoon, and everything seemed normal. Max greeted me, but I noticed something strange in his behavior. He was restless, as if sensing something I couldn't yet perceive. I left my things in the living room and went to the kitchen to make some coffee. While the water was boiling, I heard 2 sharp knocks at the apartment door. I was surprised since I wasn't expecting any visitors. Max ran to the door, but instead of barking, he just stood there, staring intently at it. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole, but I didn't see anyone. I thought it might be a neighbor's child playing around. I opened the door, but the hallway was empty and silent. I returned to the kitchen, trying not to think too much about it. A little later, while I was watching a movie in the living room, Max finally settled on the rug, and I tried to relax. The night was slowly progressing, and I began to lose myself in the movie's plot, almost forgetting about the strange incident earlier. As the movie unfolded, Max lifted his head and stared at the entrance again, letting out a soft whimper as if something was bothering him. I tried to ignore it, convinced that he was just reacting to the sound of the movie or maybe the wind outside, but his unsettling behavior stuck in my mind. That's when I heard a second knock. This time, the sound was louder and more forceful, abruptly interrupting the silence. Max jumped up, running to the entrance of the apartment, growling. I got up from the couch, now feeling a pang of nervousness. I walked to the entrance and looked through the peephole again. Once more, no one was in the hallway. I opened the door, hoping to see someone running away, but the hallway remained empty and silent. Now, a sense of unease began to take over me. I stood there for a moment, trying to hear anything that might explain the knocks, but everything was in absolute silence. I went back to the couch, but I couldn't focus on the movie anymore. Max was still restless, his eyes fixed on the hallway. He was growling, as if trying to warn me about something. The atmosphere in the apartment felt increasingly heavy, as if something unseen was present. Time passed, and Max's restlessness didn't fade. Finally, he got up and slowly walked toward the hallway, growling as he approached my old bedroom. I followed him, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. Max stopped in front of the wardrobe, staring intently at it. His growl intensified, and I knew I had to check. With a growing sense of discomfort, I opened the wardrobe. The interior was empty, just as before. Max approached, sniffed the wardrobe, and after a few seconds seemed to calm down. He lay down beside the bed again, and I laughed at myself, trying to dispel the unease. Later that night, already tired, I decided it was time to sleep. I took Max to my old bedroom where I set up a makeshift bed for him on the floor. He finally seemed relaxed, and I started getting ready for bed. But then, in the silence of the night, I heard the 2 knocks again. This time, however, the sound didn't come from the entrance. It came from inside the wardrobe. My heart froze. Max immediately got up, the hair on his neck bristling, and began barking at the wardrobe again. There was no more ignoring what was happening. I got out of bed, feeling a chill run down my spine. Every step toward the wardrobe felt heavier, as if I was being pulled into an abyss. With a trembling hand, I opened the wardrobe, expecting to see something, anything. But all I saw was the same empty interior as before. I quickly closed it and backed away, pulling Max out of the room. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, unable to sleep. Max stayed by my side, restless, until dawn. And even when daylight finally streamed through the windows, the fear didn't go away. I kept wondering if sleep and exhaustion had influenced my perception, but Max's reactions made it clear that it wasn't just my imagination.
You've just ventured into the shadows of the unknown. If you enjoyed this terrifying journey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Whispers from the Abyss, Tales of Terror. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a dark tale. We want to hear your theories and fears in the comments below. Leave a like if this story sent chills down your spine. Join us and become part of this brave community that faces terror head on. Until the next cold, dark night.